Sahana vavatu, sahanau bhunaktu, sahaviryang karavavahai, tejasvina vadhitamastu, ma vidvishawahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Chapter 16 and chapter 17 are closely linked, and they bring the individual back down to earth after all of the talk about and all of the discussion and great pramana regarding the nature of reality in 13, 14, and 15. And the reason why 16 and 17 are closely linked and important is because the human mind tends to go off rail, go off track when it gets into something really interesting. And so it tends to absorb itself into philosophy or into logic or into the pramana, the scriptures, but then it starts to forget the environment. It starts to forget the common down-to-earth things that we all need for our survival. And so 16 and 17 comes in, starting with chapter 16, and says, first look at yourself, the person. You know, we have Steve Jobs, an intelligent man who revolutionized technology. And in his book, he was reporting he was working from 7 to 9 every day, running 2 companies. I just read this recently, Apple, and he was also involved in Pixar. And he said that he was so busy that he didn't have time for his wife. He only had time for about 30 minutes on the TV. And the next day he continued working. And he did this for years. Very intelligent fellow. So he got his intellect all right. That was there balanced. But what happened? He started to suffer the health effects. He got cancer, a tumor on his liver. Then he went to the doctor, and the doctor, of course, said, you need to have a surgery to extract this tumor. And he said, no, I'm going to try alternative medicine, pseudo medicine. That didn't work. For 9 months, he skipped the doctor's recommendation. What is the doctor speaking from? A pramana which the science of medicine itself has undergone extensive, rigorous trial and error and testing. Upon the analysis of the liver, we have a solution. Take it or leave it. He said no. Therefore, and he went to his own personal strategy, his own personal view. And how did that result? As a result, he died prematurely at 56, I believe. So he surely had his intellect ready and well established. But what did he skip? His physical. So again, chapter 16, we started out with the Purusha. Take care of the physical down to earth before we run off into the philosophy and all of the high teachings and the scriptures. Your body is a sacred temple given to you to be taken care of. That too accounts for what we call ahimsa, non-injury. It's not only about applying ahimsa to the environment, but your body is also part of the environment. So we take care of our physical health. How so? We can use different exercises. I'm sure you have your own exercises. There are wonderful methods like Pilates. They exercise the core muscles. They keep the strong stomach muscles, strong thighs. It's also reported that one of the high fatality rates for older generation, 60 onwards, is premature falls. Premature falls, something that could have been avoided a long time ago if the person had a routine starting out earlier on. Something you can just do simple. It doesn't really intervene too much in other works, but something very simple to exercise your leg muscles, your thigh muscles, your core muscles, the arms. All of these things will make a huge impact after 60 and 70. We also have Tai Chi, Chuan. These are the movements that involve both legs and arms. It's a little bit harder than Qigong. There's Qigong medicine, Qigong for medicine. So they basically give you basic movements, arm movements and leg movements. Very simple to do. Download it to the iPad. Just press play on the computer and just follow. No need to think, just follow along. What could be easier than that? And it keeps you really well fit. And it's also stated, by the way, that physical fitness, by far, even more than nootropics or any kind of, ginkgo biloba and any kind of memory enhancing agents has a much larger impact. What does physical exercise than all of these memory enhancing agents? So if you want a sharp memory, then get into exercise that is very simple and it's in your nature, not something that you've been told and then you get out of it. So it has to comply with your nature. The chess player, he read so many books when he was a young kid, and he became a very successful chess player in the 1970s and 80s. But some of the other chess players started to notice that he's a little bit cuckoo. Some actually describing, quote, cuckoo. So he was very socially awkward in a sense. And also when he talked about women, he looked down upon women. And this is another example to show what happens when your intellect is highly intelligent. They said his IQ was even higher than Einstein, 180 or something. IQ is fit. Maybe he had the physical exercise there, no doubt. But what about his, in the Western world, we call it emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is much more important than the IQ, intellectual quotient. Why? Because emotional intelligence is about how you deal with your environment, whereby it's contextually relevant. Whereas intelligent quotient is about what? How do I deal with just this small little area that is just important for me and doesn't really apply, or it may apply to the entire whole. Therefore, EQ, another great book to read, is Emotional Intelligence, one of the best books I've ever read in my life. Because today, all of the emphasis is put on what? Intelligence, IQ. You know, we've got schools in Melbourne here, I think it's Melbourne or maybe Sydney, where these kids are from all parts of the world online. They're brought in and they're given various tests, but also physical activities. And they want to discern who is one of the smartest kids. And this is all based on IQ. But suppose that kid now gets identified with that IQ without any emphasis on emotional support, on dharmic principles, on principles of morality, of righteousness. What is right? How do I care and become sensitive towards other people's needs? All of that stripped out at the expense of high IQ. So again, Purushaha chapter 16, physical exercise, intellectual exercise in the form of various forms that you enjoy, that stimulate you intellectually. And most importantly, the one that brings it all together is the EQ, the emotional intelligence, the emotional support. Chapter 16, once again, talked about the improvement or the fine-tuning of the experiencer, of the bhakta. There's a verse in 248 of the Bhagavad Gita, Yoga staha kuru karmani samgam tyaktva dhananjaya siddhya siddhyo samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. The last sentence, samatvam, in other words, what is that one who is a master at yoga? The one who has an equanimous mind towards siddha asiddhi, towards perfection and imperfection that arises throughout the day. What else could this be than emotional intelligence? And that one, uchyate, is said to be, or has said to be, the master, the one who has yoga towards samatvam. Tvam means the condition of sameness. That means their mind is a condition of sameness towards siddhi and asiddhi. In other words, their mind is equanimous, whether the unpleasant arises or the pleasant arises in life. This, once again, is exactly what that book, Emotional Intelligence, is talking about, being equanimous towards the ups and the downs, because that is just the nature of life. Therefore, we cannot expect to only receive positives and try to move away from the negatives. We have to embrace them both, because that is what makes up the whole reality, at least while we are wearing the suit called the 5 koshas. Then we talked about the karta, the improvement of the doer, and we talked about the mumukshu, the spiritual aspirant, who is to look towards that big vision. Now, chapter 16 has fine-tuned the individual, as I started out this conversation, by bringing back down to earth principles that we tend to often forget as we get involved in our work and our family. So we need to bring that down as priority number 1. But then the question arises, okay, now what? Having improved the individual, the doer, the enjoyer, the person, what do I now move my mind onto? Therefore, chapter 17 comes. I move my mind onto a faith that is of a higher nature, because there's no point just continuing to have or preserve your purusha, the intellect, the emotions, and the physical body. For what? Therefore, we have to ask for what? And therefore, chapter 70 comes for the higher goal, which then chapter 18 will then answer what is that higher goal. Now, once in a while, I will try to keep this class interesting. And I wanted to do that today by presenting a mind map of last session. Okay, so I'm going to give us some colors and pictures. Sorry, chapter 17, verse 1 to 7. Okay, so we explained the three gunas last week. In other words, one who is identified with sattva guna is one who has purity of intention, purity towards oneself. There's no agenda behind their actions, and they generally they're a well-wisher for themselves and for all those around them. Those who are Rajaguna identified, they are concerned with their own ends for the sake of worldly attainments. This does not imply connotation of derogatory remarks towards them. It just implies their focus is on the world. And Tamaguna-oriented personality is one who is in the aspect of derogatory and violence, and we will see that soon. We also explained the meaning of faith. Would someone like to take an opportunity just to unmute yourself and tell me the meaning of faith according to last week?
What you stand for.
On the basis of all of the education acquired throughout life, you make a certain conclusion. What is the highest value worth of pursuit? That highest value is what I stand for, and no one's going to get in the way. Then Arjuna asked in verse 1, he said, what about those people who are sincere, who are devoted to the Lord, and yet they don't have the right method to follow? They're just kind of picking up from, as we can see here, Mr. John, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. You know, some Mr. and Mrs. Smith creates a system, which is very common today. It's called Mr. Smith system, Mrs. Smith system. They market it, right? And the irony is they give so much power when one individual creates a system, they market it so much, they overtakes usually the things like the scriptures. And so what about those individuals who are at the subject of that marketing and just don't have the chance to look at the proper methodology, which is going to lead them to the light? Are they wasting their time, or is it helping in any way? Okay. Then Krishna answers, and he says, it's not a one-off answer. It entirely depends on the individual's temperament. And the temperament is threefold: sattva guna, as we can see, a peaceful, balanced, positive person with general clarity and creativity. One who is about work, about action, about getting things done. Of course, you also need that. Take the Rajaguna away, no one's going to do anything. You're not even going to listen to this. And Tamaguna is the one that is helpful for sleep, but in other than sleep and sometimes stability, if there's too much Tamaguna, it transfers into inertia and fatigue, chronic fatigue, and so on. And then Krishna says that in general, a sattva guna, a faith, that means one's whose faith is, or one's whose temperament is predominantly sattva guna, their goal will be on divinity. Their goal will be on their ishta deva. One's whose temperament is on the basis of rajaguna, get things done, it will be on worldly success. And finally, tamaguna will be on those lower animal drives: survive, eat, sleep, procreate, and hurt. Not that hurt is a natural drive, but it's contaminated by the buddhi has been contaminated. Therefore, the person acts in their likes and dislikes. Through inference, you can tell whether the person is sattva-guna, rajaguna, or tamaguna by the devata they worship, by the prakaraha, the mode, and the bhavana, the motive. Let's look at the devata. They will worship characters like, as you can see, Vidur. We got Dhritarashtra. I'm sure you watched this show, right, before, some of us. And then we got Vidur. Vidur is a wonderful, clever character that some of us enjoy. And some of us will also enjoy Dhritarashtra, right, or Duryodhana. All of that depends on the person's disposition. We've got Dalai Lama. He is a wise, noble character, a lot of compassion shining through him. Devatas and devas like the Krishna, Rama, Shiva, and so on. Then we got world stars. So considering the personality is Rajaguna dominant, we will worship world stars like movie actors, musicians, those who are funny comedians, rock stars, and so on. So in other words, anyone that is in the worldly aspect, successful, that gets all those cheers and claps, that is the one that we want to worship. President, a governor, someone that works in your local area, and so on. And finally, this is what happens when tamaguna takes over: violence, vulgar, swear words, saggy pants pull down, children with guns. Sierra Leone, we've got the blood diamond situation where the people being killed for diamonds in Sierra Leone a couple of years ago. So whenever there is this dark, violent, swear word, disrespectful, suppressing energy, it wants to dominate. That is tamaguna. It wants to just cloud you over with its blanket and just put you down under. That is tamaguna. So I want you to notice how you feel when you see these three pictures, because that is what we call moving farther away from dharma. So this is once again showing us the progression or the devolution of a human being, or what we call the fall of the human being, and once again the rise of the human being. Then we got prakaraha, the mode, the way the person worships, quiet and mental. So if you look with someone in the house, then you're not going to hear them. You're not even going to know they're going to be doing worship, because it's quiet, it's respectful, it's considerate of your work. You could be doing something, therefore I don't want to make it loud. Quiet, and it's mental, it's inside. For example, we've got japa, that is, it can be loud too, but japa internal. And kriya yoga, you've got different lineages of kriya yoga, which is very much quiet. We've got loud and verbal or physical. And then finally, we've got tamaguna, which is harmful, like animal sacrifices. We've got that throughout the books. Firewalking, that's too, we've got today personal development gurus. Let's not call them gurus, just personal development fellas who are promoting the firewalk. Well, that is in one way what? Hurting the body. In other words, it is going so far as to risk hurting the body by inducing pain. That is one form of tamaguna worship. Okay. And then Krishna says they're hurting me indirectly. In other words, me, the dweller, the indweller, in being hurt indirectly. I'm being disrespected for being hurt. Bhavana, motive. Sattva guna is the highest or the deepest, depends on which word you relate to. Some people relate to the deepest, some with the highest. World accomplishments, and tamaguna is wishing misfortune for those around us. I don't like my competitor, I'm going to, or I'll wish something bad happens to him so that I may rise to glory. Krishna adds 4 more. So again, Krishna being the teacher, he has to add some more connections to Arjuna's question. Ahara, he has nice food there. And then yajna, the type of worship. Now in chapter 4 of the Bhagavad Gita, verse 25 to 30, it mentions 12 major yajnas. I've written an article on this on the website, you can check it out. But I'll cover it here. 12 kinds of yajnas. Now, when I say yajna, just think of it as a spiritual practice, inducing which brings your mind closer to that sattva guna worship. We've got Brahma yajna. This is generally nididhyasanam. This is contemplating thoughts of the self. We've got Indriya yajna. This is called sense restraint, sense control. As I said in this previous sessions, you're redirecting your senses intentionally, knowing how quickly the senses enjoy to get attached onto something and just latch onto it. We've got Daiva yajna. This is propitiating the deity. This is more pertinent to Indian rituals and Indian culture, whereby we have materials and we will put it into the, like Agnihotra and the Havan, into the fire. And then we have Samyama Pratyahara, sense withdrawal. How do you do this? You close your eyes and notice how quickly the mind wants to go out. Close your eyes and notice how quickly the mind wants to go out. Every time it does, you bring that attention back into the inner world. When I say the inner world, I'm talking about the world of the mind. So this is not necessarily concentration. It's just the mind catches the bus, the horn, the dog barks. Every time it hears that, it brings the mind onto how is this body feeling? Just get a sense of the body feel. So it's going from outside to inside. Charity or serving the needy. So we can also do this whenever we can, find an opportunity to serve those who may be underprivileged. Then give them something. Give them a smile. Ask them a question, or give them $1 or something. Tapaha, living a simple life, just simplifying, taking out all of the unnecessary furniture, but take out things that are not used often. Ashtanga yoga, this was mentioned in chapter 6 of the Bhagavad Gita, the 8 steps, yama, niyama, asana, pratyahara, pranayama, dharana, dhyanam, and then we've got samadhi. Jnana yajna, this is what we're doing mostly in 13, 14, and 15, and 18, shravanam, mananam, and nididhyasanam. We know this very well. Vrata yajna, this is taking up strict vows. This is whereby you say no more and then fill in the blank. Suppose you like to walk too much, or stay too long at a friend's house. You say no more staying 2 hours or 5 hours at a friend's house. I'm going to just cut it in short, 2.5 hours. And then you make that rule. So it's a strict vow. In other words, if you cannot say no to something that is so simple, then how are you going to say no to many more temptations that are yet to come in life? Then we got pranayama. This is control or redirection or mindfulness of your inhale and exhale, of the body's inhale and exhale. What's the benefit of pranayama? The quickest way to control the mind, the insistent chatter, is through breath control. They are directly correlated. How to prove this? Simple. When there's anxiety, when there's fear, how do you breathe? Fast or slow? Fast. When we are relaxed, calm, how do we breathe? Very, very slow. It's also stated in the Yoga Shastra, the slower the breath, the more you extend your life. Now, we cannot really directly prove that, but it is something worthy to consider. In other words, slow down your breath. And then finally, ahara, which we will get into now. And let's eat some wisdom by continuing. Number 3, tapas, austerity, we will talk about, and dhanam, charity. To verse 8 to 10, which is going to talk about 3 types of food. Instead of talking about what foods are healthy, how about this? Monitor how your body responds based on what foods you eat. Does your body experience calmness? Is your mind sharper, or is your mind duller after taking a certain food? Whatever it is, track that. How so? Create an Excel spreadsheet. Column 1, food types. Chocolate there. And then you have energy and time, right? Column 2, energy. Column 3, time. Suppose you take a certain kind of chocolate or a certain kind of cake, full of cheese, full of heavy materials. And after eating it, heaviness, right? Just heavy and lethargic and slow. Can't think, just that general can't think, lethargy. Put that down immediately in the Excel spreadsheet, right? Cake type, brand, put minus for energy and minus for time, because obviously when your energy goes down, your time is lost because you cannot work productively. Tomorrow you have brown rice and whatever else you have with brown rice, veggies. And you eat that and you go, wow, I feel so light after this. Usually I'll eat and I'll feel heavy and all of the blood will go and digest the food. Now I feel light. Put that down. Brown rice with veggies and specific kind of veggies you've had, because obviously you have to be specific. Put plus energy. After 1 month or 2 months, you will have a list and you will know exactly what your body is compatible with and what your body rejects. This is one of the glories of the Indian philosophy. They even take something as simple as breathing and will convert that into a spiritual practice that you can benefit from. Instead of just breathing, use breath to always bring your mind back to now. No need to have a phone reminder or someone to tell you, I'm breathing. Okay, breathing, come back to the now, to this moment. Pay attention. Simple. Food is the same. We all eat. So we can also convert food into a spiritual practice. How so? 80% plus minus of the body is made of water. Brain, let's take the brain, for example. It's basically jelly, 80% water. So that means if the individual starts to drink contaminated water, suppose, for a long periods of time, and the brain is 80% water, then they can most certainly start to affect the brain's chemistry. And since the brain, the physical, is an expression, the vehicle through which the subtle body can shine, the individual finds himself through the course of time thinking duller and having what's called intellectual lethargy, unwilling to think, unwilling to kind of solve things on my own. This is one example how food being very important, does affect the physical body being but a means for the subtle body to express through. Therefore, the cleaner the physical body, the more the subtle body can shine through in all its glory. So this is what we want. What we'll talk about is the 3 types of foods, starting with tamaguna. Now, the tamaguna is, as we discussed earlier, it produces inertia and it produces extreme mood swings. That's all you have to know about tamaguna foods. If this food produced extreme mood swing, what's one example? Which is one of the hardest sellers today? Alcohol. Extreme and instant mood swing. And alcohol is top seller. Now you just pause and think about that. The top seller, totally normal. No, nothing, like not even taboo, normal, it's accepted. Right now, as we speak, there are individuals just getting drunk all over the world. Normal. Number 1, tamaguna. What does this say? The individual whose intellect is not guided will resort to what? They will fall back down to, as I said earlier, to the basic carnal drives, animal drives. And I won't even have any kind of thing to say about it. It's normal. This is how it is. I'm just enjoying myself. No, suppressing those things which are yet to be attended. The fastest way is just to put tamaguna, a blanket of heaviness, because that's what tamaguna is. It's heavy. So it suppresses all of those things that are trying to bubble up in the mind, intensifies the probability of diseases like chronic fatigue, heart failure, kidney stones, even heart disease, diabetes, arthritis. All of these conditions are potentially amplified through tamaguna foods. So even when biologists, for example, will look at different gene sets to determine what is the cause of a certain cancer, a certain disease, even though you can look at that cancerous cell is only a reflection of what has taken place before, but you cannot really trace what has taken place before. So what we bring in is your lifestyle also counts. There is a scientist called Bruce Lipton. He talks about the genetical structures being also modified by the environment, but also by the lifestyle. So in this case, the food contributes to that lifestyle, which can contribute to cancerous cells in the future, which are not immediately known right now. So this is another thing to watch out for. Rajaguna diets. This diet we all need. This gives us boosts of energy. So hot chili is a very good one for instant boost of energy. Anything that is non-vegetarian, like processed foods. Now, again, you cannot quite put every single processed food is high in Rajaguna. You cannot do that because even processed food has an expiration date. So you could say, if you want to get more specific, the farther away it is from the expiration date, the more Tamasic that food gets, the more Rajasic that food gets. Usually it's more Tamasic. Well, while it's fresh and frozen, it's more closer to fresh Rajaguna, fresh Sattvaguna. So non-vegetarian foods, meat, fish, eggs, caffeine. Garlic is also known to amplify the sexual appetite because it produces a lot of heat at the bottom region. And then we've got Sattvaguna diet. This diet makes you light, feel cheerful, and feel clear. So again, this is important. What foods do this for you? What foods would you have to take to make you afterwards feel clear and generally cheerful and that sense of light? I feel light. I can go out and have fun and not be so much held back by all of that blood digesting that heavy food in the stomach. Whatever foods are closest to their natural source. Milk products, fresh or dried vegetables and fruits. We've got spices like turmeric, ginger, coriander, natural oils like ghee and butter is also high in Sattva Guna. What contributes to Sattva, Raja, and Tamas food? Eating is before you eat, is one of the greatest opportunities to say a prayer that is meaningful, to remember the nature of the whole reality, because you eat every single day. You don't have to say it in Sanskrit, you can say it in your own local language. Instead of saying Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavi, and so on, you can say, all of this is Brahman. The plate is Brahman. The eater is Brahman. The digestive fire is Brahman. The one who cooked the food is Brahman. The rain is Brahman. The trees and the plants are Brahman. All of this is this one order, grand order manifesting before me on this plate. The digestive fire, the taste buds, which are able to feel the taste, all of that, Brahman, Brahman, the whole thing is Brahman, then go and eat. In other words, every single time before you eat, you remind yourself that this is not just food. It is the glory of God, giving you a gift to live one more day to experience his love in every shape and form, in the form of these tastes that you're about to endure. In other words, you can add so much more grace than just turning it into this mundane, haphazard, fast food kind of, let's just eat and get on with my work. Great opportunity to convert your mind into that spiritual, silent and concentrated mode before eating. So this is another thing that we can immediately start doing from now on, along with that spreadsheet. Ayuk sattva bala rogya sukha priti vivardhanaha rasya snigdha sthira hridyaha aharah sattvika priyaha.
Those food which increase longevity, mental strength, physical strength, health, comfort, and pleasure, which are delicious, not dry, nourishing, and pleasing, are liked by sattvic people.
If the person is dominantly sattvic, that itself will determine what kind of food is found on their plate. So you go to a little, mall, and then you see meat, fish, heavy, a lot of sauce, just like dripping in tomato sauce. Next door, there's this fresh green veggies, simple, simple light foods. And you go, okay. So on the basis of this, I can make some inferences what kind of individuals this may be in nature. Krishna says that the sattvika person eats an appropriate amount of food, so they never allow themselves to have a big stomach, like, like in cartoons where Pink Panther is lying on the bed and this huge round ball, so filled up. No. In other words, you always leave at least 1/3 of the stomach empty. They don't eat too much. They also eat at regular times. They also eat in an unhurried and a neat manner. Gone. What happened? Versus slow, enjoying that taste, being with that taste. Also, they promote a calm mind, important. And such a person considers this an act of worship for the Lord. Who's the Lord? The digestive fire, the one who's going to digest the food and keep your body alive. They are easily digestible and pleasing to the eye. Of course, today we have a trick. We can just shine up the apples. The markets do this and then make them all shiny. You want to buy them. It's pleasing to the eye. Buy a organic strawberry and a non-organic strawberry, and you'll see, of course, the organic is going to be a lot smaller, but the taste is almost night and day, and so is the smell, right? And this is what we mean. The closer towards original organic, the more sattvic. It makes you feel light and bright. Katvam lalavanat yushna tikshna ruksha vidahinaha ahara rajasasyeshtaha dukkha shoka maya pradaha.
Those foods which are very bitter, sour, saltish, hot, pungent, dry and burning, which cause pain, sorrow and disease, are liked by Rajasic people.
So these Rajasika personalities, they will eat irregularly and hurriedly. This is a big thing. Corporate world, just get out for those short 1 hour, rush through and eat while standing, while on the phone. It is pleasing to the tongue. They don't really care about what kind of effects it has on the body. Not that they don't care, it's just they don't think about it. They're not mindful of it. They are cooked with a money motive, basically, a commercial items, and they're served by one who is angry. Not necessarily, but money motive and angry. I want more money, more customers. Perhaps during the COVID times, there was more often because there was so few people walking in the city. Either too sour, too spicy, too oily. It's undercooked or it's overcooked. If you leave your potatoes too long in the oven, then that's called Rajaguna, that blackness. And it produces scattered thoughts. Think about this, think about that. cannot hold one single thought for a few moments. If a food has produced that, that is something to be cautious about. Yata yamam gatarasam puti pariyushitam chayat uchishtam apicha medyam bhojanam tamasapriyam.
That food which is not properly cooked, which lacks nourishment, which is putrid, stale, or leftover, and which is impure, is liked by Tamasic people.
So a Tamasic personality, they will overeat in an untidy manner, stale, tasteless, low in nutrition, or the person doesn't really care whether it has nutrition or not. But the important one is it produces or it promotes forgetfulness. 11 to 13, 3 types of yajna. What is yajna? Worship or devotion. For the sake of utilizing some practice to fine-tune your body, mind, intellect. It's a fine-tuning sadhana. It's a fine-tuning practice. Apala kangshibhir yajnaha vidhi drishtoya ijjate yashtavyame veti manaha samadhaya sasatvikaha.
Sattvic yajna is that which is performed wholeheartedly according to scriptural injunctions by those who are not desirous of the result, with the resolve that it should be performed.
So let's talk with the sattvic method of performance. So this is the performance that should reflect in all of your practices from now on. Sattvic yajna. It says that it is followed strictly. It's got to be done for 5 minutes. It will be done for 5 minutes, full stop. It's got to be done 15 minutes before sleep. It will be done 15 minutes before sleep, no matter what. I have a little timetable here. And the way you can do this is put Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then you got 8 days. And then you got column 1, 8 columns. And then in those 8 columns, 8 rows, you put what exactly will be the first thing that you're going to do on Monday. What will be the second thing that will be done on Monday? What will be the third thing done on Monday? What will be the last thing, the 8th thing done on Monday? Same for Tuesday. And on the first rows, that means the first waking up, meditation, and going to sleep, the last one, meditation. This is just an idea, something that you can also start to adapt. Monday to Sunday, and then 8 items. Because, as I said before, the mind tends to derail itself, right? The world is trying to steal attention. So you create something that is consistent with this sadhana in this form of this chart. So they are strict in their discipline. And they give that discipline full attention. Furthermore, it's done without a selfish motive. It is done for the sake of the Lord. It is done for the sake of moksha alone. If you're not doing it for that reason, suppose it's a more worldly activity, then it's done because it has to be done. Full stop. There's no reason to explain. I don't need to explain why. It's got to be done because it should be done. In fact, when Draupadi asked the putra of Raja, Yudhishthira, why do you do good, Yudhishthira? Right? So Draupadi is his wife. Yudhishthira, how did he answer? Draupadi, this is from Bhagavatam. He says, Draupadi, I do good and I worship good simply because I can and I must. Simple. I can and I must. That's the attitude of a sattva guna. Don't need to explain why I'm doing this sadhana, why listening to Shravanam, doing Mananam, and doing Nididhyasana, because I can. The vehicle is being given for that, and I must. It is my duty. Full stop. A tennis player doesn't need to be asked, why do you play tennis? What's in it for you? What are you getting out of this? Because I can and I must. It is my duty. Why do you follow the spiritual practice? Because I can and I must, according to my swadharma. So in other words, a sattvika person listens to their swadharma in life. What is swadharma? Your new duty on the basis of that new education that you have received. For most people, what happens is they stick with the old, right? 20 years ago, the person is still same today. And yet what's happening? The whole world is moving forward. Everything's changing. New prarabdha karma is pouring out of the person, wishes to do something different. They come to a new piece of knowledge. It is your duty from there on to perform or act in the light of that new knowledge. That means moving forward like a snake, not looking back, shedding the skin. And in that aspect, Krishna means strict and with full attention. That means once I come in contact with my new Swadharma, on the basis of that new education, my new life duty, being presented before me in the form of knowledge. Okay, so the goal is clear. Before it was all about the world and enjoyment. Now it is God. In the light of that, let's perform a sadhana. How so? Full attention. Breathe in, focus, and with strictness. Abhisandhaya tupalam dambhartamapi chaiva yat ijyate bharata shrestha tam yajnam vidhi rajasam.
Know that yajna, which is performed expecting a result, and also for the sake of show, to be Rajasic.
A Rajasic personality will use the right materials for the worship. They will definitely follow the procedures. So not really different from Sattvika person, right? They will also follow the procedures according to the scriptures, according to the instructions of the Acharya. However, there's going to be a different motive, prakaraha, or the type of worship will be different. The bhavana, the intention will be different. And what's the intention? For myself. It will be either for the individual's power or gain, or gaining or show, being someone or being seen or being more powerful, getting siddhis like powers. The whole wedding was just for show, right? Let me just bring the family. Let me just see. And not only that, but today we've got what? Wedding crashers. What is that? You just invite anyone, right? Invite as many people as possible. Let's be recognized by people who I don't even know who they are. Classic example of Rajaguna worship. But during the wedding, all of the procedures are followed, all of the materials are there and high quality. But for whose end? For the end of those individuals, like name and fame, we've got married. So that is classic example of Rajaguna. Vidhihi namasrshtanam mantrahi namadakshinam shraddha vivarhitam yajnam tamasam parichakshate.
They call that yajna to be tamasic, which is contrary to the spiritual injunctions, which is without food cooked for distribution, without proper mantras, without proper dakshina, and without faith.
They will use cheap materials, try to save a few bucks, cheap ring, cheap thread, cheap clothes, cheap shoes, cheap dress. So they're using inferior material and they're not following any procedures whatsoever. And it's done without faith. Two individuals, one takes the secret, the law of attraction, and they have no faith in it whatsoever. In other words, the thinking is just do it and I'll get the answer. I'll get the results. It never works like that. Whereas another individual who has faith and they apply it and they get some kind of results. So they do it without any faith in the system. And we'll pick any system by anyone and we'll do it just for the sake of, maybe see if it's going to hit. How do they call it? Throw the dart and see if it's going to hit the center, the bullseye. For example, they will mispronounce mantras, but then not to correct it. That's a tamasic attitude. They will also take free without compensating. Common thing is, take free knowledge, take free materials that are given maybe on the street, and then just not compensate anything in return. Whether the other person gives free or not is not the issue. What the issue is, how do you make use of what you are given free? If you're given free knowledge, then you have to compensate. How does one compensate if they're given free knowledge?
By putting the knowledge into practice.
I was going to say by trying to use this knowledge to pass on or help others.
Exactly. So I wanted to hear that. In other words, you're shining an example. You're being an example of what you're being taught. We have a verse actually from Panchatantra. It goes, Apyasaha nahi tyaktavyaha, apyaso hi parambalam, anapyase visham vidya, jirne bhojanam visham. So in other words, food which remains undigested in your stomach, it becomes poison. In that same way, if you take free knowledge, if that free knowledge is not practiced, apyasaha, it turns into poison. It becomes counterproductive. Therefore, again, an individual has to make use of that knowledge, which is why I keep on stressing the practice part about this. There's so many talks and just sit and listen, but it turns into poison. Therefore, turn it into a practice. Ask yourself the question, how can I make use of this today? Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.